Okay, let's start. In case of today's session, my plan is to attempt three passages which appeared in IIM CAT 2023 in the evening slot. So I'm sharing a particular document with you. I want you to attempt only questions 1 to 4, which means only passage number 1. Check on WhatsApp also. I've shared in the master's group. Now let us look at the ideal way of handling this particular reading comprehension passage. Whenever you attempt a reading comprehension passage with a certain number of questions, always remember, never look at the questions first. Always go in for reading the passage. The reading of the passage has to be done in a certain manner. And this reading of the passage has to be done in a casual manner, as if you're reading a story. And take care that you do not worry about understanding each and every sentence and every phrase which is written in the passage. But because you're going to spend about a minute upon reading of this passage in a casual manner, uh, we should get something out of it. And there are three things which we want out of this passage once we've read it. So, you first of all need to be in a position to answer the question, what is present where in the passage? We're basically talking about nouns, adjectives, and adverbs here. And all specific questions are based upon data, fact, figures, names, numbers, which are basically adjectives, nouns, adverbs, etc. only. So if you are in a position to understand what is written where in the passage, then automatically you save a little bit of time when you go back to the passage to answer a particular specific question. Second thing which you have to take care of is that once you've read the passage, if your neighbor asks you, what is this passage about? Then you should be in a position to answer that question in two, three sentences maximum. And on preparing the answer to this particular question is something which will ensure that you'll be able to attempt general questions in a better way. The third thing is that when you read the passage, you need to keep your eyes open for answer to this question also. Does the author or the passage have a certain viewpoint? Answer to this question is something which helps you handle all the perception questions. So let's look at the answers of these three questions. When I read this particular passage and I try to answer the question in my own head about what is present where, then I can very clearly see that initial part of the passage talks about return of artifacts to their original countries. Later on, cultural property laws or patrimony laws have been discussed. And because of these cultural property laws or patrimony laws, what has happened is that there have been fewer discoveries in those areas which have passed these laws. And finally, there's an example of China, which is towards the end of the passage. I need to have just like an idea about what is present where. Let's come to the second question. The second question is, what is this passage about? So once I've read this particular passage, the first paragraph actually is not very important out here. This passage talks about countries have implemented patrimony or cultural property laws to protect their archaeological artifacts from getting exported to other countries. But this reduced incentives for foreign entities to invest in overseas archaeological exploration. This has led to fewer discoveries of new archaeological sites, and there have been fewer listings on World Heritage Site list also. And this is harmful to the tourism and cultural pride of source countries. Then there's an example of China, that China has benefited with more discoveries when it went in for relaxing the cultural property laws. This is something which is mentioned in the last two paragraphs. This will help us in handling general questions. Then let's come to the third question. The third question is, does the author of this passage have a certain viewpoint, or does the passage have a viewpoint, or is there a protagonist in this particular passage who has a viewpoint of sorts? Then, if I look towards the end of the passage, I get an idea about what is the viewpoint of the author here. And the viewpoint of the author is that countries which are financially poor but are archaeologically rich, they should relax their patrimony laws and they would benefit in the process. This is the first step after having read the passage. After this has been done, then we move on to the next stage. The next stage is questions. Questions are of three types: specific, general, and perception questions. Specific questions answer is written in a particular key sentence in the passage, and you just need to hunt back for that particular sentence which carries the answer to a specific question. If you come across a general question, you need to have your map ready, the answer to the question, what is this passage about? And that helps you in handling all of these 19 type of general questions. The answer to the question, does the author of the passage or the protagonist of the passage have a certain viewpoint, actually helps you to handle most of the perception questions. You need to be very clear about what category a particular question belongs to. Is it a specific question? Is it a general question? Is it a perception question? And then you need to identify which type of specific or a general or perception question it is. Based upon that, you have to answer the question. So let's proceed ahead. If I look at question number one, it says, which one of the following statements best expresses the paradox of patrimony laws? This is a clear, specific question. In order to solve this question, I need to be very good at finding out the keyword and the key context of this question. So when I read this question, could clearly see that this question is talking about paradox of patrimony laws, and the keyword out here is paradox. So the question is asking about a paradox, and which paradox? That is the key context. So the paradox of patrimony laws is what is being talked about. In order to solve this question, you need to be very clear about the meaning of the word paradox also. So, if I look at the meaning of the word paradox, paradox is basically a situation or a statement with two or more parts that seem strange or impossible together, the kind of contradictory. So, after I'm clear about this thing, I try to find out the paradox in case of this passage. I go back to the passage, and somewhere here there's a U turn which is happening because of the word but, and this is the point where the paradox is appearing. So if I read paragraph number 4 and paragraph number 5, these are the two paragraphs which give us a clear idea about the paradox which is being talked about. So let's see what is written here. Paragraph number 2, its first sentence says, cultural property or patrimony laws limit the transfer of cultural property outside the source country's territory, including outright export prohibitions and national ownership laws. Paragraph number 4, its second sentence says, but the downside may be that they reduce incentives of foreign governments, non governmental organizations, and education institutions to invest in overseas exploration because their efforts will not necessarily be rewarded by opportunities to hold, display, and study what is uncovered. This has led to fewer discoveries of new archaeological sites and fewer listings on World Heritage Sites. After I've read this particular part, I need to paraphrase it, simplify this information into my own language as such. And after paraphrasing, I ended up finding out the two situations which are strange if they are present together. So, what were those two situations? The first was financially poor but archaeologically rich countries pass patrimony laws to protect their archaeological artifacts from being taken away by rich countries. This is the first fact. But there's another fact which goes slightly contradictory to it. It says because of the strict patrimony laws, this has resulted in fewer number of discoveries of new archaeological sites and fewer listings on the World Heritage Site list. Financially poor but archaeologically rich countries have suffered because of this. Now, based upon this, when I look at answer choices, the answer choice says they were aimed at protecting cultural property. Yes, right, according to the first fact, but instead reduce business for auctioneers like Sotheby's. This second part of this A answer choice, which talks about reduce business for auctioneers, is something which is not written in the key sentences. That is the reason why option A has to be kicked down. When you look at option B, it says they were intended to protect cultural property. Yes, they were intended to protect cultural property. I agree. But instead resulted in the neglect of historical sites. Neglect of historical sites is not mentioned in the second situation. This is the reason why this also gets taken out. We come to C choice. It says they were intended to protect cultural property. It is right so far, but instead resulted in withholding of national treasures from museums. I did not come across any information about withholding of national treasures from museums in case of my second situation, which I paraphrased. As a result of which, this is not mentioned, and C answer choice gets kicked out. D says they were aimed at protecting cultural property, but then it's right so far. But instead, reduce new archaeological discoveries. Yes, reduction in new archaeological discoveries is mentioned here. There were fewer discoveries of new archaeological sites, etc. So D is acceptable. D is according to the paradox which is mentioned in the passage. As a result of which, option D is the best answer for this question. Remember, reduce business for auctioneers is written somewhere else, or auctioneers like Sotheby's is mentioned somewhere else. So if you have read the passage very carefully and you've remembered tidbits of the passage, then you may remember about auctioners like Sotheby's, as a result of which you may get attracted towards A as an answer. But this is not written wherever the paradox is written. This is the reason why A is answer. Neglect of historical sites is not mentioned anywhere at all in the passage. As a result, this simply cannot be the answer. Withholding of national treasure from museums is not mentioned anywhere in the passage. As a result, this also cannot be the answer. D has both information which are right according to the passage. As a result, option D becomes the right answer for this question. Let's move on to the next question now. The second question says it can be inferred from the passage that archaeological sites are considered important by some source countries because they. On reading this question, I will first of all focus on the word inferred. Inferred is a word which is indicative of an implied idea question, which means it is a specific question whose answer is written somewhere. I just have to find where the answer is written. And when I read the rest of the question, I can see the question is talking about archaeological sites, and then something about archaeological sites is being mentioned. So, archaeological sites has to be the my keyword. And what is being talked about archaeological sites? Why are they considered important by some source countries? Keyword is archaeological sites, and the key context is why are archaeological sites important for some source countries. In simple language, this question is asking why are archaeological sites important for source countries? So I go back to the passage to see wherever importance of archaeological sites is mentioned, especially for source countries essentially. So when I go back to the passage, I come across this particular sentence in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth paragraph, last sentence of fifth paragraph. It says, which suggests that source countries, particularly in the developing world, should narrow their cultural property laws so that they can reap the benefits of new archaeological discoveries, which typically increase tourism and enhance cultural pride. So this particular sentence is saying archaeological discoveries increase tourism and enhance cultural pride for the source countries. This is what the sentence is saying. I'll repeat it again. Which suggests that source countries, particularly in the developing world, should narrow their cultural property laws so that they can reap the benefits of new archaeological discoveries, which typically increase tourism and enhance cultural pride. In simple language, this sentence is giving me this information. Archaeological discoveries increase tourism and enhance cultural pride. Based upon this information, I need to look at answer choices and see which answer choice matches this information. A choice says are a symbol of Western imperialism. Now, Western imperialism is not mentioned in this particular key sentence. It is not mentioned here. That is the reason why this cannot be the answer to a specific question and gets kicked out. Western imperialism is mentioned somewhere, but not at the right place. That's the reason why A is the wrong answer. B says they are subject to strict patrimony laws. Yes, archaeological sites in case of source countries are subject to strict patrimony laws, but this is not the reason why they are important. They are important because of a certain reason. That is the reason why they have been subjected to strict patrimony laws also. So B is also not the right answer. It is not doing the job which is required. C choice says generate funds for future discoveries. If I read this whole passage and I do a little bit of philosophy and jhakmari as I call it, then yes, in case archaeological sites are discovered, they would increase tourism, which will lead to more money, and that more money can be used for future discoveries, for doing more archaeological research. I agree. But this amount of thinking, philosophy, or jhakmari is not required in case of a specific question. It may be required in case of a perception question, but not in case of specific question. So if you identified the question correctly, that is a specific question, then C answer choice, which is not written in my key sentence, is wrong. D says give a boost to tourism sector. Yes, increases tourism and enhance cultural pride. This D choice does mention something which is mentioned in my key sentence, and this could be a reason why archaeological sites are important for source countries. The result, option D is right, and we choose this as the answer. Please look at it for a moment, and then we move on to the next question. In case of question number 3, it says which of the following statements, if true, would undermine the central idea of the passage? Now, when the question uses the word central idea of the passage, remember central idea is a key word for general questions. And it also has another important word out here, which is the word undermine. So it is no doubt a general question, And it is kind of a weakening question also because it is asking for an answer choice which will weaken up the central idea of the passage. So, if this is the situation, then simple language, the question is really asking you what will weaken the central idea of the passage. So, I need to find out the central idea of the passage, or I need to keep an eye upon the map which I had prepared. And when I had read the passage in the first go, I had prepared a certain map, and that map said countries implemented patrimony or cultural property laws to protect their archaeological artifacts from getting exported to other countries. But strict cultural property laws reduce incentives of foreign entities to invest in overseas archaeological exploration. This has led to fewer discoveries of new archaeological sites and fewer listing on World Heritage Site list. And this is harmful to the tourism and cultural pride of the source countries. For example, and there's an example which has been given, which is that of China, which has benefited with more discoveries when it relaxed the cultural property laws. This is the map of the passage. Now I need to look for an answer choice which goes against this map, weakens up this particular map. So let's have a look at that now. If I look at answer choice A, it says affluent, archaeologically rich source countries can afford to carry out their own excavations. Yes, I agree. If a country has a lot of money and it is archaeologically rich, they can afford to carry out their own excavations. I agree with this particular sentence, no doubt. It is commonsensically acceptable, but it is not going against or undermining the central idea or the map of my passage. This is the reason why option A has to be kicked out. It is a correct sentence, commonsensically correct, factually correct, but it is not going against the map of the passage. That is the reason why option A is a wrong answer. B choice says museums established in economically deprived, archaeologically rich source countries can display antiques discovered there. I agree. If there's a poor country which is archaeologically rich and it has a museum, then it can display the antiques which have been discovered in that particular country inside that museum. Exactly right. I agree. But this is not going against the map of the passage. That is the reason why option B is also a wrong answer. C choice says UNESCO finances archaeological research in poor but archaeologically rich source countries. If UNESCO is financing archaeological research in poor but archaeologically rich source countries, then what will happen? Then this will mean that with that particular money, but archaeological rich source countries can go in for making new discoveries. And that is something which is going against this part of the passage or the map of the passage, which said this has this has led to fewer discoveries of new archaeological sites and fewer listings on World Heritage Site list, which is harmful for tourism and cultural pride of these countries. So, if UNESCO is giving the money to poor countries to do archaeological research and identify new archaeological sites and find new archaeological artifacts, then this goes against whatever this whole passage was saying. This goes against whatever the map was saying. And these poor but archaeologically rich countries now can end up discovering new archaeological sites and they can go in for having greater number of listings on World Heritage Site list. Then it will be good for the tourism and cultural pride of these source countries, etc. And whatever China had to do, these countries do not need to do that. That is the reason why option C is something which is undermining the map of the passage. As a result, option C is the right answer. But we need to look at the last choice also. Option D says Western countries will have to apologize to countries for looting their cultural property in the past century. A lot of students went in for picking up this one as an answer, and they were wrong because this is an answer which is based upon the first paragraph. If you've read the passage too carefully, which is a mistake, if you read the first paragraph and you remember this first paragraph, you may go in for making a conclusion in your head that as a result of all of whatever is happening in first paragraph, Western countries will later on have to apologize to these countries for looting their cultural property in the past century. I agree. I agree with that inference. The only problem is we are not worried about your inference. Your inference is not important. What is important is which answer choice is going against the map of the passage. Which answer choice is going against the general idea of the whole passage. It's a general question. D is the wrong answer, very attractive, crap answer. It appeals to a lot of people also. So the right answer in case of this question would be option C. You can pause the video, look at it carefully. Ask me any questions in chat if you have a problem with this explanation of question number 3. Let's move ahead. If I look at question number 4, it says, from the passage, we can infer that the author is likely to advise poor, which means financially poor, but archaeologically rich source countries to do all of the following. Now, because we're looking at what the author is likely to advise them, then I need to understand what is the author's viewpoint in the first place. Author's viewpoint is the viewpoint of the whole passage. So, when I look at it, we are trying to find what the author will not advise poor but archaeologically rich countries, and it also has a keyword except inside it. So, what advice will the author not give? Three answer choices are correct advice to poor but archaeologically rich countries by the author, according to his viewpoint. But one of these answer choices uh, contains an advice which the author will not give for some reason, or because it doesn't agree with whatever he's mentioned in the passage. So, the question is really asking what will not be the author's advice to poor but archaeologically rich source countries? So I need to have a general idea about what is the viewpoint of the author, what kind of message the author has, and for that the map is pretty important. So this is no doubt a perception question because you have to step out of the passage and answer this question based upon the information of the passage. At the same time, because of the presence of the word except, it is a factual negation question also. So you have to pick up the wrong one out of the 4 choices. So I have to read this particular part of the passage. This is where the author comes with the right information. And when I read this part is saying that countries implemented patrimony or cultural property laws to protect their archaeological artifacts from getting exported to other countries. But strict cultural property laws reduce incentives of foreign entities to invest in overseas archaeological exploration. This has led to fewer discoveries happening of new archaeological sites and fewer listings on the World Heritage Site list. And this whole thing is harmful to the tourism and cultural pride of the source countries. China is one country which has benefited with more discoveries when it went in for relaxing the cultural property laws. So, in a way, author is saying that other countries should also relax their cultural property laws if they're poor, and they will end up discovering more things. This is what the passage says. Now, when I look at answer choices, the answer choice says fund institutes in other countries to undertake archaeological exploration in the source country, reaping the benefits of cutting edge technology. Well, institutes in other countries may have cutting edge technology by the help of which they can do archaeological exploration better in source country. I agree. But source countries, if they are poor, they will not have the funds to give to these institutes. So, A answer choice is commonsensically wrong, according to whatever the passage is saying. Archaeologically rich source countries, if they are poor, they will not be able to fund institutes in other countries to undertake archaeological exploration in the source country. This is what makes A the correct answer because this is an advice which the author will not give, definitely, to poor countries. It will not tell poor countries spend money uh, and get the best experts in the world. They are going to find out all your archaeological sites. So A is the correct answer for this question. Let's have a look at other answer choices also. If I look at B as an answer choice, it says allow foreign countries to analyze and exhibit the archaeological finds made in the source country. If a poor country allows foreign countries to come and analyze and exhibit the archaeological finds which have been made in the poor source country, then this is an advice which the author will definitely give to the poor countries. I agree. So, because this is the right advice to poor countries, so it is not the right answer. We are looking for something which is not the right advice, which is happening in case A. C choice says to find ways to motivate other countries to finance archaeological explorations in their country. If a poor country motivates other countries to finance archaeological explorations in their country, then this is a good advice, no doubt. This will lead to more archaeological findings if they are able to motivate. So C is good advice. That's the reason why this is also a wrong answer. We're looking for the wrong advice. Wrong advice was A. B says adopt China's strategy of dropping its cultural property laws and carrying out archaeological research through international collaboration. I agree. This is definitely great advice, which is to be given to poor but archaeological rich countries, and this is going to work, and they'll be able to find more archaeological sites as a result of following the example of China. So this is good advice, and good advice is not what we're looking for here. We're looking for wrong advice. As a result, option D is also a wrong answer, and we end up with option A as the best answer. Ask me any doubts which you have in chat. The four questions which we've attempted, none of them required us to understand the whole passage. None of them really required us to do a lot of philosophy and jhakmari in order to get our answer. These were not subjective questions at all. All of them were objective questions. All questions had only one clear, perfect answer. So if you're following the right strategy, you will not have the problem of being left with two answer choices and you have to fight between the two answer choices and decide which one out of these two is better. There are always three wrong answers. There is always one correct answer. Even in case of general questions, the correct answer will be in general based upon the whole passage, and the three wrong answer choices will be factually wrong according to the passage. We've seen that before also. While discussing these four questions, there was no need for me to explain the whole passage to you. But the only part where I did use my brain properly and I did concentrate was in making the map of the passage. अब मैप बनाने के दो रास्ते हैं. एक मेथड तो ये है कि आप हर पैराग्राफ का आर्गुमेंट फाइंड आउट करें और लिखें एंड यू राइट डाउन द टॉपिक ऑफ द फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ. बेस्ड अपॉन दैट योर मैप इज रेडी, बट इट इज अ प्रीटी लॉन्ग वन. इट विल टेक अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम. You have to take a decision whether you are ready to make this kind of a map, or are you going to just read the passage casually like a story, and immediately after reading the passage you ask yourself, what is this passage about? और जो एक सेंटेंस का आंसर आता है, एक दो sentences का, that is the map. And that answer of yours need not be a perfect answer, but if it is a general answer based upon the whole passage, it's a great answer. It will help you do all the questions. We'll stop here. Did you get benefited? Yes, no. Okay, thank you. थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक यू. मैंने बहुत मेहनत की आज वाली क्लास के लिए. आज की क्लास के लिए मैंने मॉर्निंग में कम से कम 4 घंटे लगाए हैं. तो ऑल्दो आई सॉल्व द क्वेश्चंस क्विकली, लेकिन फिर मैंने ये सोचा कि आप लोगों को क्या प्रॉब्लम आती है. कोई भी स्टूडेंट जो है ए आंसर चॉइस क्यों पिकअप करेगा, चाहे वो गलत हो, एटसेट्रा. तुम क्या चाहते हो, मैटर क्लोज ना करूं? अच्छा, ठीक ठीक है. आई डू मोर क्लासेस, डोंट वरी, डोंट वरी. अरीब, आई जस्ट आंसर योर क्वेश्चन. परसेप्शन क्वेश्चंस गिव एन इंप्रेशन दैट वी नीड टू ओवरथिंक देयर. आई एग्री, क्योंकि उनका आंसर हो सकता है पैसेज के बाहर से भी हो. लेकिन मैंने ये देखा है कि जनरल क्वेश्चंस भी चाहे हो, चाहे परसेप्शन क्वेश्चंस हो, जो तीन आंसर चॉइसेस रॉन्ग होते हैं वो फैक्चुअली रॉन्ग होते हैं पैसेज के अकॉर्डिंग. तो स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चंस की अंडरस्टैंडिंग बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है हम सबके लिए. स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चंस के में किस तरह से आंसर चॉइस को किक आउट किया जाता है, वो चीज हमें जनरल क्वेश्चंस के आंसर निकालने में और परसेप्शन क्वेश्चन का आंसर निकालने में हेल्प करती है. ओके, संभव